The Paper Cuch. Philip was nervous. After his slow goods train had been rear-engined by Henry and the Flying Kipper, he felt uncomfortable any time he had to stop. Tonight he was waiting for the boat from the mainland to bring him the mail for the post train, which the railway staff call the Paper Cuch.
"It's all right, Philip," said Franklin, the night driver. "No one's going to run into the back of our train here."
They were parked at the harbour at the end of Edward's branch line, having just finished their mainline run. At last the boat arrived and the mail was loaded into Philip's vans. He did his best to make up for lost time, but the sun was already rising after he finished his run on Thomas's branch line. At first Philip wasn't fussed. It wasn't too cold out, the morning sky was beautiful, and it was nice and peaceful with no one else around. Then he stopped at the station before Thomas's junction, and a frightful buzzing disturbed the peace. He looked over at the neighbouring airfield. A white helicopter, arms wearing, was preparing to take off. "Bother," groaned Philip. "It's that dizzy thing Harold."
"Morning, old chap,"
boomed Harold.
"I've always said railways are out of date, but you're so slow with the post, you should give everyone their stamps back."
Philip was too exhausted to explain. "Airhead," he muttered as he watched Harold take off. "So it's true," exclaimed Eunice when she saw the black engine with red wheels shedding off for the engine shed.
"So Tom Matt decided to spare you and put you to work on night trains."
She would have loved to ask more questions, but Philip was already falling asleep. He rolled into the shed and dropped off almost before his tender touched the buffer stops. That evening, Franklin and Jude, the night stoker, decided to head out early. Edward arrived as they were prepping Philip, and he told the old engine about how his journey back to the mainland was interrupted when I had a brainwave and alerted the signallers.
"Glad to see you're still helping us,"
smiled Edward. Soon Philip was off to collect his vans. I was at the big station when he arrived. "I've gotten several complaints from postmasters about the delay last night," I told him.
"But that wasn't my fault,"
insisted Philip. "I know, Philip," I said. "I argued with the postmasters, but they wouldn't listen. I'm glad to see you're out early tonight. You'll have to be quick to pacify our customers." Philip set off as soon as the guard showed his green lamp. Soon Philip had collected the mail from the harbour and was on his way along the main line. As he approached Thomas's junction, he heard a familiar buzzing.
"I say, old fruit,"
called Harold from somewhere above.
"There's news flying about."
"There?" asked Philip.
"All over the place. They're going to scrap the paper cut and use me instead. Rotors work wonders, you know. Always."
And Harold hovered away to the airfield beyond the junction. Philip soon forgot to be worried. Everything ran like clockwork that night. The paper cut made good time everywhere it went. At the station halfway along Edward's branch line, Philip noticed a man sitting on a bench on the platform. He was still there when Philip made his return trip with the mail from the harbour. The man looked cold and worried.
"What's the matter?"
asked Philip.
"I've missed the last train, and there are no buses or taxis running," shivered the man. "I've no way to get home."
"We can give you a ride," said Franklin.
"It would be rather uncomfortable."
"Thank you," said the man.
"Anything's better than sitting here."
Philip dropped off the passenger at the river station on Thomas's branch line, and finished his journey without delay. However, his journey home with his empty vans was disrupted by a gust of wind knocking a large tree branch onto the rails. By the time Franklin and Jude managed to move it aside, the sun was rising. Philip felt tired as he set off again, but perked up again when he passed the airfield and saw Harold parked nearby.
"Hello, lazy things," he called. "Too tired to fly today? The wind's too strong. I'm grounded," grumbled Harold. "Not too strong for me," smirked Philip. "I run on rails. They work wonders, you know. Always."
That evening, when Philip arrived at the yard to collect his vans, the parcels clerk showed Franklin and Jude a package addressed to them. It was from the man who'd missed his train. Inside the parcel were jars of beef and carrot stew and some apple crumble. The wind had made the weather colder than ever. Philip felt all right, but Franklin and Jude had been shivering.
"Just what we need," smiled Franklin. "Look, there's a letter in here too,"
said Jude.
"What does it say?"
asked Philip.
"He says we're all splendid,"
said Jude.
"and that the paper cut is the pride of the line."